Yeah, fire up the grill, crank the speakers loud. Saturdays feel holy in this college crowd. Seth and James on the mic, preaching gospel truth. Talking rivalries, legends, red, black, gold, and blue. From Death Valley Lights to the Camp Randall Code. They're telling stories that never get old. Ain't no bench warm hearts on the show tonight. They're walking on proud under stadium lights. They're the preferred walk-on. No scholarship, still putting it on. From the church of tailgate, hands in the air.
Welcome to the Preferred Walk-On Show, the People's College Football Show. I am your host, Seth Saunders. Few people understand what it takes to create culture, but today's guest does. Before he was a college football head coach, he was a walk-on, learning early that nothing is guaranteed. Everything is earned, and culture isn't something you talk about. It's something you live. Today, he's one of the most respected leaders in college football, known for building belief, creating connection, and leading with authenticity in one of the toughest jobs in sports. We're talking leadership, culture, resilience, and the mindset required to build something people want to be a part of. And an enthusiastic preferred walk-on welcome to head coach Shank Beamer. Coach, good to see you.
Great to see you. Appreciate those really, really kind words, and it's great to be on with you.
Well, Coach, I want to start with you today. We live in a world where college football seems like it's changing every day. And one of the things that worries me as a consumer and someone who feels passionate about walk-ons, obviously, is that those opportunities may be going away. I know this is something that you feel passionate about. What does walk-ons as part of rosters and football programs mean to you and to your story?
Yeah, it's something that they're critical to our program, and as long as I'm the head coach here, I'll never let them go away. Roster sizes are getting smaller. Scholarship sizes are increasing. So there's no question that there's less walk-ons across the country than probably there ever were at this level. But they're still a critical part of what we do, because to me, they're guys that truly love football. They truly want to be at that school for us, South Carolina, for the right reasons. You're going to get their very best, and they're going to have unbelievable gratitude for the opportunity that's been given to them to be a part of a program like this day in, day out. So critical to what we do, and I will always, have walk-ons that will be a part of this program. And then there's nothing better than being able to reward a walk-on with a scholarship, which we've done, every year since I've been the head coach here too.
Coach, I want to talk about your journey as a player. From my understanding, you had the opportunity to do some D1 AA looks and things of that nature, and you made the choice to walk on and play at Virginia Tech. What went into that choice, and what's part of the mindset that you've taken from that as you transition into coaching?
Yeah, for me, it was, I was a decent high school football player, I guess. I wasn't getting recruited by the, South Carolinas of the world, but I was a good player. Had some smaller schools that were recruiting me that I was certainly interested in. My dad, when I was in high school, my dad was the head coach at Virginia Tech. So, I always knew that was a possibility if I decided that I wanted to go play for him. Looked into some bigger schools and potentially walking on at a couple, bigger schools that I had conversations with. But in the end, I knew I wanted to get into coaching. It was, okay, if I want to get into coaching and I want to play college football, I want to play it at the highest level. And, I really had to ask myself, do I want to go to a smaller school where I'm probably going to play more? Or do I want to go to a bigger school and probably play less, but I'm exposed to a big time program? I'm around my dad, which would have been pretty cool, or was pretty cool. And then getting ready to become a coach too. So the more I thought about it, the more walking on at Virginia Tech made sense. I remember having a conversation with, my high school coach, and him telling me that I should choose a school that I would be happy at if I wasn't playing football. And that's just always resonated with me. And I remember thinking to myself, well, if I wasn't playing football, I probably would be going to Virginia Tech anyway. And that's what I ended up doing. But I thought a lot about it. I mean, it was April of my senior year in high school before I finally made that decision, because I wasn't really sure if I wanted to play football for my dad. Because there's a lot of good that comes with that, but there's a lot of challenges that come with that too. And I had to, really get on board with that and make sure it was a challenge that I was ready to do and what I wanted to do for the next few years. And I did, and, so glad I did, walking on and being a part of his program.
What did that experience teach you, and how has it lent itself to helping you be part of programs, recruit kids, teach, and now build a program at South Carolina?
Yeah, I think for me, it was, be who you are, which helps me now in the role that I'm in. Like, okay, I'm coming in as the head coach's son, and everybody knows I'm the head coach's son. I am who I am. That's not going to change, but just be myself and work really, really hard. Don't try and act differently or get any kind of favoritism because my dad is the coach. And then from my dad's standpoint, now for me in coaching, treat everyone the same. Yes, I was his son, but he didn't treat me differently. If any, he was maybe harder on me in a lot of ways. And that helps me now just being genuine and being who you are. And yes, I'm the head coach's son, but at the end of the day, I was and am Shane Beamer, 18-year-old freshman that is just like the rest of you guys. And that helped me during that experience. It helps me now as a coach. And then certainly, being in that role and understanding not just myself, but the other walk-ons that were there with me at Virginia Tech, and just, seeing the challenges. I mean, those are some of my best friends in college and still are. And seeing the challenges they went through makes me appreciate, the walk-ons that we have now here at South Carolina, and understanding their desires, because I went through the same thing myself, trying to find a role on that football team and trying to earn a role and find my way onto the field to actually get to compete in games.
Well, you talk about finding a role. We have a very special place in our heart on this show for long snappers, mainly because I was a 138-pound long snapper in high school. So talk to me about the importance of finding your role, finding your spot, creating value, and then kind of forcing your way into the conversation and what kids today that are chasing down a dream can learn from that.
Yeah. For me, I was in probably 8th grade, and I can remember being in the backyard at our house in Blacksburg, Virginia. And at that point, I was playing football for Blacksburg Middle School. I was playing basketball for Blacksburg Middle School. I loved baseball. I played baseball growing up. Knew I was going to play baseball when I got to high school, but had an idea that football is probably going to be my best sport. And I remember my dad, we were out in the backyard just like throwing the football and messing around. And I remember my dad telling me, if you want to play football at the highest level, I was a quarterback / receiver / defensive back. He was like, you're going to have a hard time playing at a high level at those positions. But he said, you're really pretty good at long snapping, and you ought to just continue to work at that, because if you keep getting better at that, that's a way for you to get on the field at a place like a Virginia Tech or somewhere else if you want to go. And then if you get on the field that way, now you're on other opportunities to get on the field at different positions. And I just, that hit me. And at that point, I continued to play receiver, quarterback, and defensive back all through high school, but I always snapped on every team, and it always just kind of came naturally for me. So that gave me finding a role that you're good at, that you can do at a high level, made me feel more confident in walking on at Virginia Tech, because I said to myself, you know what, I can do this, and get in there and compete and work and find a role. And then same thing, I see it now with our players, and just walk-on specifically. I was meeting with our special teams coach yesterday. We were just kind of going through our roster and potential depth charts and things like that on special teams. And there were 4 to 5 walk-ons that I said, okay, keep this guy in mind, or we need to keep this guy in mind as we go into preseason practice and the season, because, he may be limited here, but he's really got a niche for doing this. Or I think he can certainly find a role on the kickoff team doing this, because I know he'll give you everything he has and whatnot. So I think that's the thing. It's just finding a role and then really working on your craft to be good at it, which leads to other opportunities beyond that role.
Coach, I'm interested in building a program. And when you get the call to come interview and then get offered the job at South Carolina, what is the first thing or the first set of things that you want to walk in the door and lay down as the foundation of your program, where if you go in and talk to a kid, you can say, this is the South Carolina way. This is the way that we do it?
Yeah, I would lean on our core values as a program. I'm a big fan of Gus Bradley, the former head coach of the Jaguars, who's now a coordinator in the NFL. But I'll never forget, I was coaching at Virginia Tech, and I went down to visit the Jaguars, and he was very kind with his time and sat down with me for a couple hours before practice. This was in like May or June when they're doing OTAs and mini camps. And I remember him saying to me, okay, what are your core values as a coach? And I didn't have any. And I remember thinking to myself, and he's like, you need core values, not just when you're a head coach, but as an assistant coach. Like, what do you want to hang your hat on? What do you want to be about? And then I sat down, and around that time, shortly thereafter, Tony Bennett, who's a good friend, became the head basketball coach at the University of Virginia. And I remember Tony Bennett talking about, I think he called it the pillars of his program, basically the core values. So I sat down as an assistant coach and said to myself, okay, if I ever become a head coach, what do I want the program that I'm the head coach of to be about? And then as an assistant coach, if I never even get an opportunity to be the head coach somewhere, what do I want to be about as an assistant coach? The players that I coach, like what do I want them to embody? So I just, sat down, and there's a lot of, words or core values that come to mind, but I really just kind of honed in on what is most important to me. So for us, it's people say you remember things in threes. I don't know. We have 7. So hopefully you can remember 7, but loving what you do, loving one another, being willing to tell each other the truth, gratitude, the gratitude that I have, and I want our players to have to be a part of this program. Positive energy. I'm a positive person. I'm not a glasses half full guy. I'm or glasses half empty guy. I'm a half full guy and trying to see the positive in every situation. Love, gratitude, positive energy, trust. Simple. You earn it by telling one another the truth and being able to rely on one another, player to player, coach to coach, player to coach. Love, gratitude, positive energy, trust. Toughness speaks for itself. It's mental and physical. Accountability. We're all accountable to one another. What I do as a head coach affects everybody in this program. What the defensive backs coach does affects everybody in this program. We're all accountable. And then competition. And competition, that word is, at its essence, means striving to be one's best. And that's what you're doing every day. I'm competing to be a better version of myself tomorrow than I was today. And then everything that we're doing, we are competing on the field. So that's what we're about as a program. When I came up with those, I'm like, man, that's me as a coach. But when I think about myself as a husband, father, I can look back at this and say all these things relate to being a husband and a dad too. So to answer your question, that was it. Here's what I want to be about. When I interviewed for this job, I presented it to the athletic director. If you hire me, here's what we're going to be about as a program. The first team meeting I ever had here, we talked about that. You go around our building, it's everywhere, and it can't just be words on a wall. I mean, I try and be very diligent about living that example each and every day. I tell our players, if you don't see me doing one of these or living this out, call me out. And then being able to point out examples of that too, of examples of accountability, of examples of toughness, of examples of someone showing gratitude. But that's what we hang our hat on and preach all the time.
Coach, so often I feel like the coaching profession gets boiled down very crudely to wins and losses. But for me, I feel like coaching is the people business, and the legacy that you're leaving is the kids you affect and how you impact their story. If kids come back to you and come back to your program 5, 10, 15 years after they played, what is it you hope they tell you that left a mark on them?
Just thank you and the relationships that we built. You always had my back forward because as coaches, what you told me in the recruiting process, it's who you were when I was there as a player. And it was just a great experience, and you maximized my ability. And that happens all the time. We had a former player that was back in our building today that hasn't been here a couple of years. But just seeing, the smile on his face and his eyes light up as he goes around the building and sees the people that he hasn't seen in a couple of years. And then the people in this building seeing him for the first time in a couple of years. And that happens all the time. It's the culture that you want to be about where, guys, nothing, I save them all on my phone. If and when I get text messages from players just saying, thanks, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for what you taught me. Thank you for the experience. Thank you for giving me a shot, believing in me, whatever it might be. I mean, you hear about a lot of the negatives of college football, but there's still a lot of really, really good. And those relationships that you're able to have with the young men that you get to coach is what it's all about.
Coach, I have young kids who are all on their sports journey, and I'm always interested in dealing with adversity and how to teach that and coach that in them. What have been your greatest lessons throughout your playing career and your coaching career about dealing with adversity and turning it then into something positive?
Yeah. To quote Tony Bennett with Virginia, I mean, I know he's got the famous quote that when they lost as a number 1 seed at UVA to UNBC, and then the very next year they won the national championship, there's a quote that he has that, adversity, I'm paraphrasing, but adversity, if you use it the right way, can buy you a ticket to, somewhere that you couldn't have gotten to before, or somewhere special, that type thing. And I believe that, the adversity that you go through can be tough as you're going through it, but there's great growth that comes from that. And the lessons it teaches you, the way it hardens you, the appreciation it gives you, I think for us, it's when that adversity comes and we know we're going to face it, hopefully not with a loss, but there's going to be adversity that we face throughout a season. Maybe a loss, maybe just a tough moment, injury, whatever it might be. And I think for me, it goes back to just leaning on those core values, that positive energy that when you do have that adversity, you can't, go negative and not see it and not maintain that positive energy. You can't be a fraud and completely violate and get away from your core values when you do face that adversity, and then being able to use it and learn from it. That, to me, I believe in every game you play, whether you win or whether you lose, you can learn something from it. And there's positives and lessons that come out of wins, and there's positives and lessons that come out of losses, and being able to really treat every game the same. And then as a father now, same thing. I mean, you want them to go through those struggles and understanding that, things are hard and how you deal with that and grow as a human being throughout that process too.
Coach, hopping Doc Brown's DeLorean with me. I want you to go back to your final game for Virginia Tech. If you could walk up, grab number 25 by the face mask and say, hey, here's one thing, one piece of advice I want to give you as you start this journey into your role as a man and as a assistant coach and head coach, what would that piece of advice be?
Well, before I give advice on that, I'd give him advice about that last game, because the last game was the national championship against Florida State, and we lost that night. We had a 1-point lead going into the fourth quarter, and then we lost the national championship game. And that's something I'll never get over and think about all the time, because I was playing in that game and I was the long snapper, and we had been so dominant on special teams all year, and we actually gave up 2 touchdowns on special teams that night. We gave up a return for a touchdown to Peter Warwick, and we gave up a block punt for a touchdown. So that's something I'll never get over. So I would give him some advice on that game, potentially, about how all of us to play better. But I would just say, I was fortunate that as I came out of that game and I got into the coaching profession, I had a great lesson or great model to follow in my dad, my mom, who both of raised my sister and I the right thing. I would say is just continue to be who you are, continue to treat people the right way, work really, really hard. Don't expect anything. I'm not naive. I understand that my last name helped me get into the coaching profession. I understand that. But at the same time, once I got into the profession, it's why I didn't go be a GA for my dad at Virginia Tech. I left and went to Georgia Tech. I wanted to make my own name and not have anybody ever say, okay, he's got this job because his dad's the coach at Virginia Tech. I really wanted to just outwork people and treat people the right way and earn my stripes, if you will, because of being Shane Beamer and not Frank Beamer's son. So that's what I would say, is just work really, really hard. Don't expect anything. Just put your head down, keep your mouth shut, do a good job. And if you do that, people will notice and you'll get opportunities. I got an opportunity. I was a GA, graduate assistant at Tennessee for 3 years, and I got my first full-time job. I got that opportunity because, Sylvester Croom became the head coach at Mississippi State. He hired a guy by the name of Woody McCorvey, who's at Clemson right now, to be his offensive coordinator. Woody was the running backs coach at Tennessee. I was the defensive graduate assistant at Tennessee. So Woody and I worked together for 3 years. I was on the defensive side of the ball. He was on the offensive side of the ball. And it wasn't like for 3 years I was going to Woody McCorvey saying, hey, I need a job, or if you ever get an opportunity, keep me in mind. We never did, but he felt strongly enough about me from just watching me do my job for 3 years on and off the field. And he felt comfortable enough recommending me to Sylvester Croom, who I had never met in my life. And then he gave me an opportunity. My point being, just work really, really hard in the job you're in. And certainly it's all who you know and things like that. But the most important thing you can do is realize that every day is a, resume builder for you. Like every day people are watching, and that's the best thing that you can do as a young coach. And that's what I would tell, Shane Beamer back on January 4th of the year 2000, when we played in the national championship game and it was time to move on with my life and get into coaching.
All right, Coach, last question today, but just how cool is it that the 2 head coaches of the flagship universities in the great state of South Carolina are both former walk-ons?
I hadn't thought about that. It's pretty cool. I know his story. And speaking of Woody McCorvey, like Woody coached Dabo in college. So Woody's, I know what Dabo would say about Woody McCorvey, and I know how I feel about Woody McCorvey, and it's the same. And I think it just goes to shows that he's got a great appreciation for them. You see that on Clemson's team. He's got a great, work ethic and belief in himself, meaning Dabo. You see that because he had to as a walk-on at Alabama and to Alabama. But I think it's pretty cool. And I know he believes in the importance of walk-ons and will never get away from them, and count me in that boat too.
Well, Coach, we certainly appreciate the time today. Before we let you go, please tell all of our listeners how they can best support the Gamecock program.
Well, there's a lot of reasons, but whether you're in South Carolina or Columbia, or whether you're nationwide, just cheer us on and come to Columbia for games. And there's a lot of ways to support us, but we'll take all of your cheers to begin with.
Well, Coach, we certainly appreciate the time. We know that South Carolina is in good hands with you at the helm, and we'll certainly be rooting for you and for the program.
Got it. Thanks a lot. Really, really, really appreciate you having me on, and keep up the great work.